it's time. Good evening, and welcome to our lighting of the Advent Wreath for the second week in Advent. I sent out a service, and I hope you all got it, and if you were able to print it out. And as we begin this evening, I'd like to ask you to join me in praying for all the people this evening who do not have a home, especially the 12 people in New Jersey who their homes were burnt out today from an explosion. And maybe we could remember them and hope that their neighbors and the community reach out to them. And as always, we can reach out in our own neighborhoods. I would like to ask you, if you can, to pick up some diapers. There's a chronic need for diapers. And I can't carry them all at this point in time. But if you could carry one and bring it to your parish outreach, or if you're on the South Shore, in the Patchogue area, to the Lighthouse Mission, which is a wonderful, wonderful social services evangelical Christian group. It's right on Montauk Highway, about between a quarter and a half a mile west of Station Road. So if you came up 101 to Montauk Highway and made a left, it's about 3/4 of a mile on your left. So there's need everywhere, and I just ask you to join in the community of faithful who do a little something. It's all those little somethings that make the difference. And last week I talked about Advent being a triptych. I brought it. I really do have one. And let me see where this is. I never looked to see. This was sent to me by Kathleen Reinhardt, who lives in Texas. And lo and behold, she was a classmate of mine in Dominican Commercial High School. We graduated in 1966, and it sounds like in the dark ages now, but it wasn't really, well, okay, it's the dark ages, but this is of Virginia. No, you cannot borrow it because it's a treasure. And I love the fact that each page gives us just a little bit of the journey. What we need right now. It's like grace. What we need right now is given. And when you are ready, some people need a close-up of it. When you are ready, you turn the page and you get the next piece. Well, tonight, we are on the second page of our Advent triptych. Don't quote me to any priest, because I'll be going to church jail for that one, I'm sure. Especially Father Frank Pizzarelli. Do not tell him I said that, okay? Now I know for sure he'll hear it. But maybe I'd invite you to just take a moment with me and remember who we are and whose we are. And the response to each statement is, the word of the Lord is steadfast and true. During Advent, we recall God's promises spoken through the prophets. To the hurting, God promises unshakable hope. The word of the Lord is steadfast and true. To the forsaken, God promises unconditional love. The word of the Lord is steadfast and true. To the broken, God promises healing. The word of the Lord is steadfast and true. To the trusting, God promises deep roots of faith. The word of the Lord is steadfast and true. Our reading this evening is taken from the 9th chapter of the prophet Isaiah. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. Those who live in a dark land, the light will shine on them. You will multiply the nation. You will increase their joy. They will rejoice in your presence as with the joy of harvest. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. This evening, I'd like to begin by saying a few words on light and darkness. But first, I'm going to ask Michelle to call our dog, since she is walking circles right in front of me and tripping over my feet. Good girl. Go ahead, honey. Good girl. Well, we tried. I told this story before, but I love it, and maybe if you've heard it, you love it too. It's a story about a family who moved into an old Victorian house, and it was one of these ones with the big porch and the gables. It was just beautiful. The problem was it creaked. All the floors creaked. And their son, Brian, who was 7, he was terrified in this house. He was sure there were ghosts. But he was most terrified of the pantry in the kitchen because it was another room. And they had just moved in there and the light fixture was broken. And his mother was cooking up some grilled cheese sandwiches and she thought she'd serve tomato soup with it. And he was right there and she said, Brian, would you please go into the pantry and get a can of tomato soup? Well, little Brian, he looks into the darkness. He steps aside, sticks his hand into the pantry while his head is facing the other way. And he prays, and he says, Jesus, if you're in there, please hand out the tomato soup. I love that. I love it. Standing before the darkness. Where in your life are you reaching into some darkness? I think we all are. I have only recently become aware of how affected I am and have become from the COVID season of our lives. And I think we all have some of that, don't we? And then, whatever the situation, maybe with family members, a life-changing event, something that presents a lot of darkness in front of us. Do we call to Jesus? I'm not talking about a casual call here. I'm talking about serious. Do we stand, even if we have to turn our heads and stick our hand into the darkness and say, if you are there, Jesus, take my hand. Take my hand. You see, I think I was raised, and maybe you were raised, to think of faith as a noun. But recently, as I've been thinking about it, I realized faith isn't a noun, it's a verb. It's that action of reaching into the darkness and trusting that someone, Jesus, will take your hand. Will take your hand. You see, we don't possess faith, just like we don't possess grace. Faith is an energy, it is a grace, that's in our souls. And it is an energy moving us to trust. So how do we grow in faith? Well, How do you lose 10 pounds? We all know how to do it. Doesn't mean we do it, right? But you lose 10 pounds by what you feed yourself and how you exercise. Faith, it's the same thing. We grow in faith by what we feed our souls, ourselves, and how we exercise our faith, how we live it in our lives. Advent is a time to feed our faith. There is such richness and symbol in Advent. We don't feed it, don't feed our faith by watching some of this divisive TV commentators. We don't feed it by listening to gossip, by recognizing that it's them against us. We feed our faith by paying attention every day, looking for the touch of God in that day. Some goodness. And we exercise our faith by trying and failing. I always think of my friend who, said to me, this morning I gave my kids to God when they got on the school bus. And by the time they turned the corner, I had taken them back. How many times have you said to God, I know I have, first I prayed and prayed and prayed. And then I said, it's okay, God, I'll take care of it. Maybe not in those exact words. Yeah? But we exercise it by trusting. And then there are moments that both feed our souls in faith and help us exercise living that faith. A number of years ago, I was giving a talk in Bellport, and I took up a collection, and that collection supports me and some of our retired sisters. And in the collection basket was this. It's a bag of change. And along with this note. And the note says, I love the meditation. I am struggling with my finances. Now, this money was never going to pay the electric bill. But this money told me that someone believed enough to give from the little she had and believed that it would help. I've never spent this. Michelle and I keep it in our kitchen, not for emergency money. This is sacred money. Because it is like in the gospel, the widow who comes and puts in the smallest of change, the mite, in the collection at the temple. It's all she had. She gave from her need, and Jesus pointed her out as such an example of exercising faith and generosity. Just struck me. By her faith, she enriched mine. She nourished my faith. These are simple gestures, small ways. That's the way it's done. One day, a couple of weeks ago, I was looking over quotes to send out for Advent. And this one, I love this one, just stuck with me. And I think it's something to think about when we get involved in the frenzy of Christmas. And all that shopping. You know, if you're not shopping in a store, you're shopping online, and you're trying to figure out what can you get, what can you afford, you know, and is it enough? I love the people who say, is this enough? What is enough as a gift? And then this is what I read. Each gift we pick out for someone is our giving. The gift becomes an echo of God's generosity. The gift becomes an echo of God's generosity by us exercising our faith in caring and loving. Echoes the great generosity of God. Boy, think about that when you're Christmas shopping. I think it would change my attitude. I happen to be done, but because it wasn't that much to do. But it did strike me. What's the attitude I was having? And a couple of times I did think, is it enough? But this whole journey that we are living all comes down to a quote on a tea bag. This is the wonderful, wonderful gift, one piece of it, that I got both last Advent and this Advent. It's the Advent tea, and each day has a quote. And this says, each of us is an innkeeper who decides by the way we live if there is enough room for Jesus in the inn. Wow. Isn't that something? I love it. We decide today if there's enough room in the inn for Jesus. You know, I'll tell you something. When I prepare this, it causes me to pause. You know, as I think about this, I say, how do I live it? So that I can have the courage to say to you, how are you living it? How are you living your faith? Remember the boy, Brian, standing before the darkness? I'm going to ask you tonight, if you could stand with me, all of us together, before the dark places in each of our lives, and in trusting that there is someone, we are not alone reaching into the darkness, and in trusting that we can become an echo in our lives of God's faithfulness and generosity. Wouldn't that be the best Christmas gift God could give us, and we could give ourselves and those around us? The second week of Advent, you're going to hear tomorrow one of the stories of John the Baptist. He didn't say he was the light. He didn't say he was the one. But he did tell us that he was an echo of the one. It's not me. He's coming. He's coming. Imagine if we said that. He's coming. He's coming. I wasn't planning on telling you this story, but this is another story I love. And I was going to save it for another week in Advent, but I can't help myself. It's the story of the little boy who went to see Santa Claus with his grandmother. And they're on this big, long line. And he says to his grandmother, "Where's the line to see the baby Jesus?" Wow. I love that. I love that. I invite you to take a moment before we light the candle and think about the dark places in your life. And believe that you are not alone there. Jesus is already in there, waiting to take your hand. Please join me in our prayer, lighting the Advent wreath. We light this second candle as a sign of our faith. Faith that you can meet us, even in the middle of our troubled and sick world. Faith that you can still see us, though we often feel lost in sadness and fear. Let this light be our guide that brings us to you once more. We pray in union with our brother Jesus. Amen. I will be praying for each of you throughout the week. I ask you to pray for me, that all of us may nourish our faith and exercise it. Have a peaceful week.